Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, new paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week, Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. Reverend Dr. D. Richard Dugan, Elizabeth Morse, and she is specializes in energetic kinesiology, is that right? Emotional fluency coach is what she is. She's also the founder of Right Brain University, as we talk here on Tell Me Your Story. And I want to ask you a little bit about this. I just love the title there. The website is Right Brain University. Now, I tried always to remember tried to come up with sort of an anchor to figure out, okay, right brain is, and left brain is it the left brain that's the creative part, or is it the right brain? I've always mixed those up. The one is the logical, and I would think left brain would be logical, L, and so forth. Hell, get me straight on this, because I'm a little confused.
Well, so here's where the typical scientist would go crazy, because if you put people into an MRI, fMRI machine, and you start scanning stuff, they see that both brains are active in both types of tasks, both creative and academic. But because of a neuroscientist who had a stroke, suddenly there's validity to what you could call the left hemisphere state and the right hemisphere state. So the left hemisphere state is what I'm talking to you with. It's the verbal, it's the academic, it's the details, and it's a let me just get this right. It is a serial processor. So it understands forward and backward in time. The right hemisphere is that creative, big picture, nonverbal, kinesthetic. It's like all about the body and feeling and sensing. It's in charge of all of the sensory processing that we do. And it sees the big picture all the time. And so whatever the mess one's life is in, that part of our brain is at peace and calm and connection and connected to others. It's community, it's we. It's non-judgmental. It is connected to our higher power all the time. And we, as a culture, more and more and more are only educating the left hemisphere, punishing people for being in the right hemisphere because we're not productive in the right hemisphere. We're not like, oh, I gotta go make sure that I'm at work, because we're at peace, like we need both sides to work together. But what's happening, I think, is this epidemic of despair and stress and trauma and anxiety and depression is connected to the lack of time that we allow people to develop into that right hemisphere state, as children in particular.
Yeah, I have commented before about my sadness over this generation of young people. And when I say young, preteen,
Mhm.
who don't get to play and do the things that I did when I was a preteen in the 60s and very early 70s,
Mhm.
and just having a blast running throughout the neighborhood, not being afraid of anything in the sense that we weren't worried about being abducted or what have you. We weren't worried about gangs and those kinds of things. We weren't concerned about that. And the people who lived in the houses on the blocks where we ran through the alleys and the yards and everything, they knew who we were. They
Mhm.
knew where we lived. If we crossed a line, they would be going to our parents. And so we were respectful in that way. Our
Mhm.
parents raised us in that way that, look, this is somebody else's yard. How would you feel if they ran through your bedroom and tore things up and so forth?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and my heart goes out to the young people of today because they don't get that. At least I would say a large percentage probably don't get that because they're on their screens.
Mhm.
They're worried about whether they're going to survive this day in school
Yeah.
because of what we've got. And I will tell you that I can't stand the phrase, the children are our future. I wish I could ban that from our
Mhm.
lexicon, from our zeitgeist, because the truth, and I realize this is my observation, bear in mind, my observation, the truth as I see it is, children are not our future. The adults who are in charge don't care about the children because they're not doing anything to stop these horrific events that traumatize these kids. And then as adults, we end up manufacturing more of these people who they just can't deal with the realities. And so
Yeah.
they take it out on the people around them. And that's what saddens me more than anything else.
Agreed. Agreed. And this where it's so important to be able to handle one's emotions. And people aren't taught that just because one feels angry or shamed or rejected or whatever, that's information that if it didn't create such pressure without being able to be processed and understood, then there wouldn't be the impulse to act.
Hmm.
But because people have this misunderstanding that because they feel a feeling, it means that somebody else is responsible for that
Yeah.
feeling.
Victimhood.
Yeah, that's the issue. And so I decided to stop being a victim. I didn't know how to stop being a victim. I had to learn that the hard way through finding this energetic kinesiology and learning that I didn't have to feel all of a feeling. I could feel a drop or two of it. And really, that's something that I think would maybe more appeal to people who either feel like they don't have time for their feelings or actually also for men because if a guy is angry, that's more acceptable culturally than if a guy is scared, right? But if you
Yeah.
only have to feel the drop or two, you don't have to like lose touch with who you are as a human being. You're sort of gradually learning, oh, here's this thing, and there's this part of my brain that needs this from me, needs
Yeah.
to learn this way. Otherwise, it's like we have the emotional brain layer, which is huge in humans. Uh, it is educated at the level of like a kindergarten or at best a toddler, at worst.
Yeah. And what's really sad is we have people at the highest levels in our society who perpetuate this victimhood. It's
Mm,
their fault that we are where we are. And I keep saying this over and over again. No, we are where we are because of what we have done. Okay? What we have done, whether it's an individual, a
mm,
family, a community, a city, state, a nation, or if you want to take it all the way to the global level, the globe is where it's at because of what all of us have done. We've all contributed.
mm.
Whether we've actually contributed or not, that's a contribution. By not participating, you are participating because you live here, you
Yeah.
breathe, you're
Mhm.
taking in the oxygen, you're eating the food, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this may sound really strange, but a friend of mine who I co-host a program on this station called Skyview with Dr. Sky,
Mm,
we talked about how the migratory aspects of the human being to different parts of the globe has an impact just because of the sheer weight
mm,
on the spinning of the earth.
mm,
And it's like, really? Yeah, because there are over 8.5 billion people on the planet.
mm,
And let's just say for the sake of argument, we'll give an average of 150 pounds per person. And I'm not even going to try to do the math. That's a lot of weight. And when you
yeah.
move a large percentage of the population from one space to another, you know, you have a shift. It has an impact. Not to mention, of course, all of the other ancillary aspects too, in terms of the waste that we create,
Mm,
the landfills, and on and on and on, and then the buildings. I'd heard that, for example, Manhattan, the island of Manhattan, it's very slow, but it's sinking
mm,
because of the weight of all the buildings. It's like it doesn't take a rocket scientist or a neurologist
mm,
to figure that out. And so when we move, I mean, my wife and I, we just moved to a mountaintop house that we've bought. We were able to buy a house in this day and age, which was incredible. I was as shocked as everybody else that I told
mm.
about it. But, we moved,
Yeah.
and there's this shifting and the moving. By the way, kinesiology also goes by another name, and I learned about it back in the 80s called
Mhm.
muscle testing.
Yes.
Yeah. And there is an aspect of this I'm not sure what to call this modality, if you will, that is, if I'm correct, and I'd love for you to elaborate, if I'm correct, is directly connected to our intuition, right?
Yes, I would say so. So, uh, there's been obviously a lot of scientific resistance to the idea of muscle testing. But I know of a chiropractor who went to Oxford University and ended up getting a degree from them. Uh, and her thesis was about muscle testing, about muscle, they call it muscle response testing, like the long form uh, word. And what she had in trying to train people um, for the study is, there were some people, and this has to go back to karma and all that kind of stuff. There's some people who pick it up quickly, some people who don't. Some people were testing at 100% accuracy in a double blind study. Some people not better than 50-50. I can tell you from my own education and learning how to do muscle response testing that there were many layers of self-sabotage that were preventing me from getting a good, accurate test with some people.
Hmm.
Other people, no problem. So it partially has to do with who you're testing and what level of experience that you have, and whether there's any past karma between you that could be interfering with your ability to work with that person. But overall, I believe it was like a 63% uh, result when you could only logically expect 50-50. And she got her degree from Oxford University. And in addition, there have been over 200 studies at this point that show that these types of kinesiologies, where we are working with the intuition of the body, are accurate. They are specifically working with touch versions,
Hmm.
like tapping, for example,
Oh, yes.
and what they are doing is looking for being able to see what kind of frequency is being produced as somebody's getting this treatment, and they can sense that there are gamma waves with that. And with the sham treatments that are the control study, there is no gamma wave production, and there is no difference in how the people are responding versus responding very well to these types of treatments with tapping.
Mm.
And it's being used to help people with PTSD. It's being used in other countries like New Zealand and Korea to help with people on Medicare, their equivalent of Medicare, for example, pays for it. So we're sort of, I think, at the cusp of a revolution of people being more convinced that this is a modality that has benefits to it, that is scientifically reproducible. And so that's, it's kind of where acupuncture was in this country maybe 20, 30 years ago, where you
Hmm.
could get arrested for putting an acupuncture needle into somebody, depending on the state. So,
Yeah. There's also something I went through as a young man because of my connection with the blind community in Phoenix.
mm,
I was legally blind from birth until 36 and had a lens implant.
mm,
But there was this woman by the name of Virginia Benderly. I remember the name. I cannot remember the technique, and it may have been kinesiology as well. But this was the study that, or the event that I took part in. She had these manila envelopes sealed, and there was a photograph inside. And she would give each one of us one of these, or we would pick one. We would pick one out of a fan of these envelopes. And we would then sit down at the table. We'd put them down on the table. We would not, other than handling them, put them on the table. We were not to touch them, but we were to put our hands over the envelope, just above it, and then we would describe the very first thing that we experienced, the images, if you will,
mm,
because she did tell us this much that they were photographs
mm,
of whatever. So, and most of us were fairly accurate in our descriptions of what was in the photograph, which was really, really incredible. It was really astounding.
mm,
But I remember that experience in terms of the whole aspect of sort of training one's intuition. And that's one of the things too when it comes to this kind of thing where they always told us go with the very first thing that comes to mind. Okay?
mm.
Don't start thinking about it and trying to process it.
Yeah.
Go with the very first thing. And that's the same thing with kinesiology. I mean, I was taught to use it in the grocery store when I was shopping. Is this good for me? And of course, the
Hmm.
technique that I was taught was where you take your one hand and you make a loop out of your thumb and index finger, and you take the other hand, you do the same thing, only you link them like a chain.
Mm,
And yes, they would stay locked, and
hmm.
no, they would break apart.
Yeah.
And that's how I used it. And then there came the point where you didn't have to do that anymore. You just kind of knew
Hmm.
instinctively, intuitively, whether or not those purple carrots were in my best interest and so forth.
Hmm.
And then my present wife and I became Reiki masters, and there's still
Ah,
something similar
yep.
there
Hmm.
because you're not sending out the energy to the person there with you or absentee
Hmm.
with a specific result in mind other than to send the energy to that person to do with as they wish.
Hmm.
I came up with this just the other day. I said the electric company does not provide the electricity and then tell you how to use it.
Yeah.
You get to use it however you want. When my wife and I sent an absentee healing to my father's brother, um, it was a little disconcerting when we ended up having to go to his funeral a few weeks later. And I thought, what happened? But
Mm.
the longer I have processed that, I've realized no, exactly what was supposed to happen happened. He
Yeah.
used it for the purposes that he did, and then he moved on.
Yeah.
And that's his choice,
Hmm.
you know. So that's kind of the way we are when we tap into this energy, if you will, as you talk about in reference to kinesiology. You
Hmm.
know that our guest here, Elizabeth, her path is really it's a deeply personal one. It's a journey through trauma and burnout to wholeness through the language of the body and the guidance of the spirit. And of course, the spirits guided her to write her latest work, which is called Your Best Life by Friday. We'll find out about what day you need to start to get to Friday as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. Your Best Life by Friday, Practical Tools for Success and Enlightenment. Elizabeth Morse is my guest, and it's really a pleasure to have you with us to talk about this because we're all working through all kinds of things that can really be very frustrating. I mean, I could go through a laundry list of the frustrations that my wife and I have experienced in just the last 5 months
Mm.
since we were given notice that we had to move. And I have to say that at that moment when I read this and I knew what this meant, there was a part of me that said, well, what's the phrase? The possibilities are endless. They're
Mhm.
endless as to what could happen next. And I was thinking more in the positive sense, in terms of what might happen.
Mm.
But I wasn't even thinking about buying a place.
Mm.
And yet, bam, 5 months later, we're living in our own home, and it's just fabulous. What day of the week are we supposed to start so we can get to Friday and have that best life?
Well, the idea is to break it down into 5 days of the week so that we um, have an easy way of reviewing what we've learned during the course of the week. So you take your time to make your way through the book. It's not a quick read. I mean, it's like literally you could read it all in a day,
Yeah, you could.
but the idea is to give it a framework that you can go back and review and say, well, how is my life working in this particular area? How can I improve it? And I started the framework with my first book, which was Your Best Health by Friday, how to overcome anxiety, depression, stress, trauma, PTSD, and chronic illness, so that when you get back into your life, you can sort of prevent yourself from backsliding by coming back and using these tools.
Hmm.
So, basically, we all have the universe is within us. We are connected to our higher power at all times, and our healing is 100% within us. But we have grown up believing that we can't connect to our highest and best expression of what this life can be for us, that we're not worthy in some way because of things that you and I, as the conscious mind, can't remember, but our body remembers, and our body stores it, and our body remembers all of the karmic stuff that it's ever been dealing with, or any family member ancestrally has ever been dealing with. And all of that is housed within us. And, just a week ago, I was integrating a past life trauma that happened to me. These things periodically come up, and, rather than perpetuate the negative self-talk that one has because, one might have had something traumatic happen in another life even, doesn't mean that we can't live a better life than now. And this is something that, some religions that believe in past lives think, well, that just means that, if I was born in a and went through difficult circumstances as a youth, that means that that's the best that I can really accomplish in this lifetime. I can't really hope for more, and that kind of unfortunately can perpetuate the victimhood. But really, success is a frequency, and it's largely controlled by the vagus nerve, and which is it's a cranial nerve that runs through the body, and it connects to our parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest and digest nervous system. So if we've had a lot of trauma, we might be so stressed out and unable to build like the muscle of the vagus nerve. The parasympathetic system is like Gilligan from Gilligan's Island, if you remember that. And the sympathetic nervous system, which is like the attack and the flee and all that, fight, flight, freeze, that is like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Hmm.
And so what I had to learn was how to go from being Gilligan, and like seriously, like Gilligan was like my strong elder brother because I was afraid of every feeling. I was afraid of trying anything,
Hmm.
to trying to bring more Arnold Schwarzenegger into my life without adding to, like trying to make Gilligan stronger without, and basically make Arnold less called on. So it was more normal.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, folks, this is fascinating because one of the aspects of this that I want to touch upon too is how we here on this program talk about how we are looking for those new ways of living because the old ways don't work. All you have to do is look around. They don't work. They're not working. Um, and we're also wanting to make this a better place for everyone, but everyone has a different definition of what better is. And in your case, your best life by Friday, everyone's going to have a different definition of what their best life is.
Mhm.
And I know that we do tend to sabotage ourselves constantly, and especially, maybe mostly and more exclusively, as far in regards to our emotions. Our emotions tend to sabotage us. They prevent us, if you will. But the funny thing about it is, they're our emotions. They're not someone else's.
Yeah.
And we all have the same emotions. It's all about intensity.
Hmm.
It's all about intensity. And you talk, being a trauma expert in your experience and so forth. I was talking with a woman who was talking. We were talking about trauma and how her method, her modality of helping people to work through. And it dawned on me as we were conversing, the event itself, and we could list a number of things. My grandmother's passing away in our home, Pearl Harbor, 9/11, et cetera, et cetera. The events are not the trauma. It's what we perceive those events, how we perceive those events
Yeah.
within ourselves that is the trauma. Because
Yes.
you and I can look at the same event and you can look at it and say, and walk off skipping happily and having a great rest of the day.
Hmm.
Whereas I am over in the corner in a puddle, just scared out of my mind. And it was the same event.
Hmm.
Talk to us a little bit about how, we'll go into the aspect of working through the traumas we have. But what about working on not generating the trauma when we see a particular event that normally might cause us to experience trauma within ourselves? Is there a technique for a
Ye-
better, more
yes.
logical perception, if you will?
Yes. Peter Levine talks about it in what's his book about the tiger? I forget the full name of the book. But uh, so basically, if we have a traumatic thing happen, the normal thing that happens is that we create adrenaline to escape a situation, for example, um, to use the flee example or fight example. And what will often happen is we'll stop ourselves from having a reaction. And if we go to sleep that night, that part that didn't get to be processed and understood, that we didn't help emotionally regulate ourselves and stay connected with love to ourselves despite the event, that part will become a part of our subconscious. It wasn't safe to be that person today. And so, therefore, that persona gets that felt that feeling has to get locked away as neurochemicals in the body. And instead, what we can do is let ourselves feel our feelings during the day. It might not be possible to feel it in the moment. So, for example, if you are injured and you go to a hospital, or if you have elective surgery, you go to a hospital, they give you anesthesia. You come out of the anesthesia, people are often kicking and lashing out.
Hmm.
This is that PTSD response that if they just are allowed to move, then they wouldn't go into having PTSD from the surgery. It is possible to get PTSD from surgery. Um,
Hmm.
if they as soon, but in order to keep them safe, they have to. tie them. And so uh, what I personally have found helpful is that if you're in a situation, say you're in a board meeting and you can't show that you're having a big emotional reaction, but you know it's going to be bad, or you're, say some kind of event shows up and you're trying to hold together for the younger members of the family. Somebody just passed away. You don't want to have too extreme an emotional reaction. Just the right amount to show that you love and care, but not that you're coming unglued and they are suddenly having to feel like they need to be the adult in the room, right? So there's
Mm-hmm.
that fine balance. How do you experience that? Just uh, thinking about it and imagining the muscle movement activates 60 to 70% of the same neural pathway as actually running or um, screaming or whatever. It's allows you to vent the steam off or the fear off in a way that more supports the limbic system, I find.
Hmm. It's fascinating to me in terms of wanting to live a better life, live my life's purpose, stay focused, stay happy, or at least joyful inside and so forth. I mean, the joke is that yeah, I can show you people who are happy all the time, and they spend their time sort of, so to speak, euphemistically in a rubber room
Mm,
because that's how they're coping with the outside world by just staying happy all
mm,
the time. But that is not our natural state. We move through the different emotions that we have been given. And we encourage people to do that. We also hope you'll get a copy of Elizabeth's book. I want to tell you about the website once again, Right Brain University. That's right, going back to school. Elizabeth Morse is my guest. She's the author of the book, which is called Your Best Life by Friday, as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Reverend Dr. D. Richard Dugan, along with Elizabeth Morse, and I love the fact that there's a connection we have in regards to, for example, this concept of your special energetic kinesiology. That you're a kinesiologist and an emotional fluency coach. You also teach individuals how to communicate with their subconscious. Now, that's interesting because I remember taking psychology in class, and we had the id, the ego, and the superego.
mm,
But there's other parts of our psychology, if you will. And in this case, you have the conscious and the subconscious, and some people live in the unconscious.
mm.
How in the world do we communicate with that aspect, the subconscious, that I always thought was kind of, it was almost sort of involuntary. There was an involuntary aspect to it that it kind of did its own thing. It was affected by who we were and what we did and so forth, but it wasn't as I think the phrase is uh, plastique, so to speak, that you could mold it and so forth.
Mm.
But it sounds like you kind of can. You can,
I think so.
yeah. Talk to us
Yeah.
about that.
So, I think we grew up with the idea that you had the brain that you were going to have for the rest of your life. But then the idea of neuroplasticity showed up, that we can modify our brain for whatever aspect didn't develop well. There's a psychologist by the name of Gay Hendricks who I believe lives and works in Ojai, and he has a book called The Big Leap, and he talks about the subconscious. I'm demonstrating this zone like maybe like a 5 inch wide band in our lives,
Hmm.
with like above that and below that. But the subconscious wants us to operate in that zone of comfort and continuity, and that's its job. It's the default mode network. It wants to recreate the kind of experiences that we had before in order to survive them. The that emotional part of ourselves learns through feeling feelings. If we have all of these feelings from our traumas that we didn't ever learn, then it can't ever have a reason for going beyond this zone of comfort. And so Dr. Gay Hendricks says that we want to be in our zone of genius, which is that, that this big, like the sky's the limit kind of
Mm-hmm.
life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the subconscious, you see it all the time. People do something big, but they've had trauma in their lives and they might be famous, but then they crash and burn. That's the upper limit problem that Dr. Gay Hendricks talks about in The Big Leap. It's a great book.
Mm.
So what I've realized in my life is that um, if I give the subconscious what it wants, which is to learn emotionally, then it allows itself to be rewired. And that's what I do for people. So I have the the gift of being able to read the field of other people and to be able to find out what feelings are coming up in a session. When we set a goal, that goal is stressing the subconscious out. The subconscious has its agenda of continuity. So we set a goal that's in that zone of genius. We're stressing ourselves out. And the thing is that we feel stressed by it, not realizing that part of the stress is the subconscious being stressed. And it's not going to tolerate that. It's going to start sabotaging.
Mm.
So you might sign the lease on the great new building that you think is going to, be the answer to your prayers for generating all sorts of income, all sorts of tourists coming in and making a mint, right? And suddenly you can't do the most basic things like write checks that are due or fill out forms that are due, or you can't get your car fixed because you're just like wanting to curl up in bed in a little shell. That's the subconscious sabotaging you. And so if you let the subconscious learn the feeling, in this case, maybe of anxiety, then it can go, oh, yeah, that feels terrible. Why? Yeah, yeah, I don't want any more of that. Okay, I gotcha. And then you can integrate the inner children that were trying to be, that were holding space to react with anxiety every time you tried something better.
Mm.
And we're like layers of the onion. It's a really never ending process. But I try to give people the tools for them to do a lot on their own. But
Mm.
basically, the subconscious, it's like training people how to tame a dragon. Ultimately, it's not tameable. It's willing to cooperate, but you
Mm-hmm.
don't want to stop doing work on yourself in whatever form of spiritual connection and surrender and like ultimately aiming for your highest self to be in charge of your life and surrendering that to your higher power, right? And that's I think what a lot of us people like you and I are doing in this lifetime right now is trying to make people understand that their healing is within themselves. They can do so much to overcome trauma. Really, when you have this idea in your head that you're not worthy or something that you've done in the past is still haunting you and or you were raised in a certain way and people treated you a certain way, ultimately you're deciding for your higher power what is going to be allowed in. And that's slamming the door on the law of attraction. So what I'm doing is trying to just tell people, if you have an idea that you can only achieve so much in your life, it's that's your ego trying to protect you.
Yeah. It's interesting too, as you're sharing this, what's going through my mind are all of the uh, successes, accomplishments, and the most recent one, of course, is buying a house.
Yes.
We were motivated, of course, by the termination of tenancy by the landlord of the property where we were living. And I'm curious as to why it is that we have so much difficulty remembering those big and little successes that we have had throughout our lives
Mhm.
that we can look upon and say, well, I did that and that and that and that and that and that.
Mhm.
So I can do this too. But instead, there's something inside that says, no, you can't. You can't do that. And then, and for me, uh, because I was trying to do my best to stay open to the universe, which you believe is orchestrating on our behalf, on our behalf, not
Mhm.
against us, but is for us.
Yeah.
Um, what is the roadblock that because I will tell you that I had it pop up on occasion. We had one morning where we both collapsed on the bed, holding hands, crying, saying, "Let's just grab the cats, put them in the car, and just drive away.
Mm.
This is too much. This is just too much to deal with."
Yeah.
But we regained our composure, and I have to say, I give my sister Cecilia, so much, I'll say, credit. I can't tell you how much I appreciate what she said to me during some of the rough times. She says, "You need to understand how much you and your wife have overcome just in the last 5 months.
Mm.
Look how far you've come." And
Mhm.
and I was feeling a little low at that moment. And there she is just saying, "Hey, you know, it's all good. You're doing fantastic.
Mhm.
Just keep going. Keep putting one foot in front of the other." Why is it so hard for us to look at the gold medals on the wall that we have achieved, that we did?
Yeah. So I think that humans in general have a problem with negativity bias, and that's a survival mechanism. And the more that we were traumatized young, and the more that um, we don't have a spiritual practice, and we are just sort of relying on like the the muscle of the brain to try and generate things through hard work,
Mm-hmm.
the the more we are a victim to that kind of thing. And that is absolutely that brain default network that's like promoting the victimhood. Um, and kudos to you. I mean, you had to have within you the ability to hold space for something better to happen to you, which when you grow up with trauma, the other shoe always drops. And 100% the other shoe, I knew that the other shoe always dropped. What I try to tell myself is everything always turns out marvelously well, and tell everybody that I speak to about it, that goal, not as I'm going to tell my higher power anything about what to do. That's just allowing the door to stay open to the law of attraction. So with humility, everything always turns out marvelously well. Because if it's not going to be what I would call marvelously well,
Mm-hmm.
then I can deal with it once instead of worrying about it today, tomorrow, and every day until it actually happens. And what I found is almost like a magical thing happens where even if I can't, like something's happened that's so bad, and 99 times out of 100, it's always led to the SHIT hitting the fan. I I am not my higher power. I say, I cannot know how this is going to turn out. And then I say, I have to just ask for everything to turn out marvelously well. And I can't tell you the things that have pulled themselves out of the can.
Yeah.
It's
I had a
amazing.
yeah, I had a guest. Her name is Zen, and she shared a statement that when you're in the can, this is the statement that you make. And for us, the can was June 7th of this year.
Mm.
And the statement is, "This could be the best thing that could have ever happened to me." Or if it's an us, us. And it was hard to say those things as we went through June, July, August, and into September and so forth. But I really tried to, because I do believe, and I wish I could remember which scientist or physicist said that the universe, it's a friendly universe. That was
Mm.
sort of the phrase that was used.
Mm. How lovely.
And recognizing that there is nobody other than myself that is against me at times. I'm not 100% against me. It is those moments, when
Mhm.
I sabotage. And it's like, okay, really need to remember that this is a friendly universe and it's on our side. It's not
Mhm.
against us.
Yeah.
Now, if the Earth gets hit by a meteor, well, okay, this could be the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because I get to go on and experience something different, out
Yeah.
of body, different, and so forth and so on. Or if I'm abducted by aliens, which we joke about this, we wish the mothership would come because it's just getting a little too weird down here. By the same token, I don't want to be one of those escapists who wants to avoid, what's happening here. This is where we live. It's a beautiful place. It's like it's paradise.
Mm.
Depending upon what part of the world you live in, I mean, I've lived in Phoenix and it was great growing up, and then we moved to Santa Barbara and it's been great for 20 years, and now we live in a new place up on a mountain about 6,000 feet in the air, and it's fantastic. And who knows how long we'll be here? 6 months, a year, 10 years, But the reality is that this is not a horrible place. And there is, as I love to say, there's always room for improvement. And that goes with each one of us too, right? And that's what you're
Mm.
trying to provide with us, for us, is that taking a look at that room for improvement to find your best life by Friday practical tools for success and enlightenment. The author, my guest, Elizabeth Morse, here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Reverend Dr. D. Richard Dugan. And Elizabeth, this is fascinating. I want to ask you a little bit more about. Um, I've had people talking about this, but I want you to give us your perspective on what is this somatic. Is it somatic healing or therapy, what have you? What is that, and how do you use that in this context of finding our best life by Friday?
Well, so uh, the overview, if we were to look at traditional Chinese medicine, is that each of the organs has a particular emotion that it um, runs. So, for example, um, liver is anger, gallbladder is resentment, the heart is love, but it's also hate. So kidneys would be fear, bladder also. So if we extend it from there, what happened from that wisdom, right, is that also chiropractors have developed 42 muscle testing where they look for strengths and weaknesses, where things are muscles are firing or not firing.
Hmm.
When we have trauma, different muscles will stop firing. And this is because emotions are held in that line. And uh, it we learn as children that certain emotions are allowed to be expressed in a household and others aren't. So if you look at if you Google, traditional 5 elements, Chinese 5 elements, you'll see that there's a circle and there's these different organs that are operating. And the energy is supposed to flow as we allow ourselves to feel all of the feelings. But we are taught that if we feel some of these feelings, we get punished, we get spanked, we get, locked in our room or whatever. So we learn that we're not allowed to run the energy through some of those organs. That leads to being afraid to feel those feelings. It creates the events that happen to us are generating subconscious holding, instead of dealing with the feelings. So we have a lot of somatic processing that we need to do, which is just getting in touch with your body, finding out what those signals are. And in fact, I was listening to a really great podcast called the Cruise Elite Podcast, KRUISE podcast, Elite Podcast, where Taylor Cruz was talking about a lot of people misunderstanding pain. And so he does applied um, neurology, where he's actually looking to help people improve muscle movement, physical uh, ability. You have a pain in your knee. He said, well, sometimes the knee pain has nothing to do with anything other than your threat bucket is so high. So the stress receptors and the you call them nociceptors in the body are um, the general stress levels in your body are so high that your body can only talk to you in terms of pain. to make you stop. And you think, oh, it's because I pushed too hard in the jog. No, it's because you're not paying attention to the fact that your mortgage is too high, or you being asked to move out of your house, or your boss and you aren't getting along, or your child is having trouble in school. Those things are creating a response in your threat bucket. And so he's dealing with it from an anatomical and like getting the most out of your muscles. I'm saying, wow, let's look at the muscles. Let's look at the movement problems. Let's look at the pain that you're having. Let's look at the things that you want to have happen in your life that you can't. And let me tell you that if you let energy run through these points in the form of feelings, it will lower the threat bucket overflow, stop the overflow in the threat bucket. And not just that you will have better physical response in your life, but you will also have things happen in your life that you want. So, I help people get, past the bar or get certified to be a therapist. I've had, several of each at this point, help people get better results on test taking because we carry with us our learned helplessness, and our learned helplessness is also muscle tension. It's where, we're holding on to more undigested food than we should be. It's not an accident. It's a way that the body's sabotaging us. And given really, like the ultimate threat right now, right, is everybody's talking about AI and how it's going to create job loss. Well, how are we different from AI if all we do is try to compute all day long with that left the prefrontal cortex and the cortex? If that's all we are is just computational, then where are we different from AI? How are we not going to get surpassed from AI? And the difference is our emotional brain, that limbic system, that education that can happen that nobody's looking at and saying, they say, well, you just need to develop your emotional intelligence. But what they're doing is they're telling people to intellectually understand what the feeling is rather than just letting the limbic system do its own learning.
Hmm. Yeah.
It learns in ways that we don't understand. We don't need to understand. It's not our job. Our job is to be a good partner to it, a good, like, be able to reparent ourselves in a loving way through all of these things that need to be learned and integrated.
So, am I understanding that on the side note here that we will not be surpassed by AI because of that?
Well, that would be my argument, yes.
Okay.
That ultimately the more and more we are willing to make that change, and perhaps, the world will not be willing to go in this direction, but I sure hope it will. I,
Yeah.
I think I think that as we do our individual work and we calm the storm within of our inner trauma, that it will calm the storm that we see in the world. And that's why I'm doing my work. I think that we ultimately will be able to connect with each other in deep ways instead of just um, deeper and deeper ways to where we do see that we are all one.
Uh, the thought that came into my mind was the old Dr. Seuss story about Horton Hears a Who, and
Mm,
he sees this, finds this civilization that he can hear on this dust speck. And I'm thinking, okay, so we don't want to take the attitude that the civilization on that dust speck is AI, and we are not going to chant, boil that dust speck, boil that dust speck, boil that dust speck, because it's just a tool. It's
mm,
like saying, no, 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 a hammer can be dangerous, so we better get rid of all of the hammers.
mm,
I interviewed an author who uses AI to write his books. Now, he made it very clear that the only version of his book that he lets AI write is the first. And then he takes that and then he molds it like a piece of clay the way he
mm,
wants to. But AI is
mm,
only the very first draft. And that interview, I started that interview by saying I have a bias against AI because
mm,
I am quite capable of using my brain to do the things that I have been doing for years. Some would say, "Well, yeah, but you're old school, Richard. You're old school." Well, yes and no. because I have used AI in terms of searching for things, which is was even more helpful than Google.
Mm.
And so there are practical applications where we're not going to do ourselves out of jobs, and that kind of thing. Besides, what would be the point of living if we didn't have something to do? For example, everybody would, I'm 65, and people ask, well, when are you going to retire? I says, well, when my car needs new tires, then I'll retire the car. Okay, but as far as I'm concerned, uh, I won't retire until my soul leaves this carcass. I use the phrase that they'll have to peel my cold, dead carcass off of the console at the radio station, because I enjoy what I do. And that's not to say that I don't enjoy spending time with my wife. I certainly do. And doing the things that we have done and traveling and all these kinds of things. Uh, but in terms of work, I don't, I couldn't do nothing. I mean, I'm just not that kind of a person that could sit around and do nothing. Ergo,
Mhm.
I don't think AI is, I don't think we're going to allow AI to take over everything, because what would man do? What would our life's purpose be at that point?
Mm.
I mean, granted, I haven't thought of everything, but
Mm.
I mean, I love doing these programs, which is great, and because there is always room for improvement in this world, and we're all trying to, in one way or another, to improve ourselves. The more we know about ourselves, and again, the good, the bad, and the ugly, all of it, the light and the dark side,
Mm.
the better we understand others as well. We have greater empathy,
Mhm.
greater understanding, greater appreciation for what people have gone through. And I think that's part of what you are sharing with us through the practical tools for success and enlightenment through your best life by Friday. And I think that you've kind of set it up in a sort of a 5-day thing. You give us the weekend. I like that. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
This is fascinating stuff. My guest is Elizabeth Morse. The website, this is so cool. I love this. Is the website is Right Brain University, and we certainly hope you'll go there. We'll be linked to that website. We hope you'll get a copy of her book as well as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. Elizabeth Morse, my guest, and Right Brain University is the website, rightbrainuniversity.com. The book is entitled Your Best Life by Friday. And Elizabeth, I want to thank you so much. This is very interesting stuff that ties in with virtually almost everything that we talk about on this program, no matter who the guest is, no matter what the subject is. Uh, we're just we're just trying to have a better understanding of who we are and where we are and why we are. And I
Mm.
honestly do believe that this process that you've shared with us through your book can help us to do that, even if it's in a small way, even if it's the first time we've ever thought about it. I mean, I've been through personal growth programs back in the 80s. I went through
Mm.
not
Mhm.
EST. I went through LifeSpring, which was an outgrowth, I believe, of EST. And I went through a couple of them in the 90s with my first wife called Delta Vector and Omega Vector.
Mm.
And EST or LifeSpring was a kind of a deal where, yes, they did kind of break you down for the first day or two or three, those nights. And then Saturday and Sunday, you're there all day. And now they're trying to rebuild you. And now they're
Mm.
trying to make you a better human being and so forth, to understand who you are and why you are and where you are and so forth. And life and Omega and Delta Vector were the same way. And hopefully, if we stay conscious, our lives can be that way, where it will teach us more about ourselves, which teaches us more about each other, because we are more alike than we are different, aren't we?
Oh, very much so. And one of the, I think, more practical things about this book is that if you were to buy it and read the part about as without, so within,
Hmm.
you could have a much happier holiday season with your extended family who you can't stand whatever political opinions they have that they won't stop talking about. You'll realize that in some way that you have an inner child that's being activated by this person, and you might not be able to stand that person, but what I think is that it's our job to learn how to love these abandoned parts of ourselves, because these energies get into trouble if they are not loved and reintegrated into ourselves.
Mm. Uh, I've shared this before. I've had a conversation with my younger brother. I think he's 2 years younger than me. He retired at 55. I am not retiring. But we had this conversation, and it was interesting that when it took place, it was the night following my eldest sister's, our eldest sister's memorial. And as we started, I got the sense that this conversation could, not would, but could uh, split us and put a wedge between the two of us. So I made the commitment at that moment inside myself. I said, I don't care where this goes.
Mm,
He is my brother and always will be, and I
mm,
will always love this guy. And we had our conversation for a couple of hours, and we are on different sides of the political spectrum.
mm,
But here was the kicker for both of us, and I don't know whether he was aware of this or not. Despite, or maybe because of, our differences politically, we agreed on three things that needed to be fixed or dealt with.
mm,
We didn't necessarily agree on the solutions, how to fix
mm,
them, but we
mm,
agreed on three things. And that's something.
mm,
And I'm so proud of him because, in his capacity as an employee of Walt Disney, traveling the world helping to build the various amusement parks, he was able to take our parents, for a vacation to China to see the
oh,
Great Wall and all of these kinds of things. I would have loved to have been able to have done that myself. I wish I could have. I'm
mm,
not envious of him for that. I'm very proud of the fact that he did it
mm.
because my parents deserve to be treated that way because of the hell the six of us put them through. But at the same time, my mother and father also acknowledged that that was what they wanted, was a large family. So, in a manner of speaking, it's kind of on them. We didn't do it to them; they did it to themselves. But we've
Exactly.
had fun. We've had fun, and so I I just cannot imagine, um, specifically in the immediate family, doing something like what people have done over the years. Said, "Bye bye, I'm out of here because you're a nutball
Mm,
because of what you believe."
mhm,
And it's like, really? But I also believe that there's a God. Don't you believe that there's a God? Well, yeah, but you're an idiot because you believe blah blah blah. It's like, well,
mhm,
wait a minute, wait, come back, come back.
mhm.
We have commonalities, and if that's the only place that we can start, then let's start there. And so I like what you have to say here. And again, I thank you so much for joining us here on the program. I do have three final questions that I ask all of my guests,
Mhm.
but I will ask those of you in just a moment. But first, I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. Nine different programs, nine different guests, nine different conversations, streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com with podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and we're on YouTube where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will go to Amazon and get a copy of my book, which is Choices: 5 Steps for Life. And if you can leave us a tip, our tip jar is called PayPal. And at richarddugan.com, there are links to both Amazon and PayPal. If you can support us, help us out financially, we would be so gratefully appreciative. I thank you, thank you, thank you for those who have helped and for those who will help. And finally, we ask that you take some time during this, the decade of perfect vision, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still small voice. And with all of that being said, we move into our final phase, The final three questions for a very special guest. And the first of those three questions is, who is Elizabeth Morse?
Gosh, military brat, proudly so. Um, I would not have been able to do what I've done to learn how to help other people if I hadn't been a military brat, 100%. And I got to travel the world as well as a young thing, growing up in the Philippines and Taiwan.
Hmm.
Spent more time outside of the country before I was 10 than I spent in it. And so it always gives a unique cultural dynamic when you observe your culture as an outsider. Um, and yeah, so I am a spiritual being having a physical experience. That's who I am.
Hmm. What gets you up in the morning?
I love my life. I've created a life that is just full of joy and and peace. I love my second husband dearly. I love my children. I just love my clients. I love the idea of all of these ideas that I have are happening 24/7. I'm waking up in the night and oh, I can try this now. I just get these downloads all the time. And yeah, so I'm living my best life. I really feel I am.
Final question. What was your best day?
Mm. I am very grateful for all of the best days that I've already had. I don't think that the very best day has necessarily happened yet, but my many, many best days involve walking on the beach in the morning and the night, connecting with my husband, connecting with my children, connecting with my dog. Um,
Hmm.
these are just, feeling close to source. It's just on an elemental level. I'm so grateful for.
Hmm. Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for being a part. Pardon me. A little caught in the throat there. My goodness. Thank you so much for being a part of the work we're doing here. This has been wonderful. I hope we can have you back again to continue this conversation and talk about some of the other work that you're doing. You say this is not your first book, and you've got other things that are going on, and we'd love to talk to you more about that.
Wonderful. I'd love that. It's been a pleasure, Reverend Dr. D.
Well, thank you, and thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I'm still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for being in my life and letting me be in yours. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.